Namaskar and welcome. Every serious science gives importance to its own history. By knowing the history, we know how the science has evolved and what works and what does not work. And we get an overview over the important elements so that they can be carried forward to maintain their relevance and their integrity. But this is not the case when it comes to yoga. The yoga community are in general ignorant about their own history and traditions. And that makes me wonder what future yoga and yoga science has. Let's try to find out. I have been involved in the global yoga community for the past 25 years. And my observation is that the yoga community is a bit confused and is lacking direction. Most teachers, they create their own style, just mixing elements from various religions and traditions according to their personal preferences. And at the same time, certain key practices like meditation are pretty much ignored. The result of this is that the system of yoga is gradually losing its essence, and it is turning into a style of fitness. To maintain the integrity and importance of yoga, we need to understand its essence and traditions. And to be able to do that, we must know its history. So let's take a quick peek at a few important aspects, a few prominent personalities and scriptures that has shaped yoga history. First, we will look at Shiva. And Shiva is in most scriptures hailed as the father of yoga and tantra. Next, we will look at Krishna. And he is famous for being the director of the epic Mahabharata story, and he was the key person in the famous yogic scripture, the Bhagavad Gita. Then we will look at Patanjali. He was the author of the famous yogic scripture, the Yoga Sutras, and he was the compiler of Raja Yoga. We could have included many other great yogis here, but I have chosen to focus on these, plus one more, because they are the ones that have introduced the key elements of yoga as we know it today. Perhaps the biggest challenge regarding yoga history is that these personalities lived thousands of years ago. So the question is how to find reliable information about them. Because in Shiva's and Krishna's time, there was no proper script system, and their teachings were passed on orally from teacher to students for thousands of years before they were written down. So how can we find reliable sources? And here the answer is found in the yogic practices themselves. But for all this to make sense, we first need to understand one important thing, and that is, what is the goal of yoga? What is the essence of it? The word yoga means unification. And then we need to understand what is being unified with what. And in this case, both the prominent Vedic scripture and the Tantric scriptures, they agree. And in the Tantric scriptures it said, Sam yogo yogo ityuktu jivatma paramatmana. This is from Sanskrit, and it means when the small human consciousness unites, or we can say merge, with the cosmic divine consciousness. That is yoga. The two becomes one. From that infinite cosmic consciousness, everything has evolved. And every little incident of the whole history of this universe is known to that consciousness. And if one managed to merge one's small human consciousness into it, one can tap information directly from it and potentially know everything. Such knowledge is known as intuition. And a person that has achieved the highest level of intuition, we may call that a person an enlightened person. Such a person is either born enlightened or became it through yogic meditation. Such enlightened persons has played a huge role in shaping the system of yoga. And that makes us wonder, how can we recognize an enlightened person? How can we know a person has really reached that state of enlightenment and it's not just a bluff, not just a charlatan? One way to find out is if you meet such a person, he will know everything about you. Everything as in everything. Even the most secret thought in your mind. And another quality we notice from such persons is that they do some special things, some extraordinary things for the progress and for the upliftment of humanity. And they introduce some groundbreaking, some very revolutionary ideas to every important aspect of life, to every important aspect of the society and field of science. Such a revolutionary guide and social reformer is in yoga history known as Guru. Shiva and Krishna was such enlightened gurus. And in modern times, the great tantric master Sri Sri Anandamurti appeared as Guru. Like Shiva and Krishna, Anandamurti would also on timely chosen occasions demonstrate his powers, his omniscience, his all-knowing nature. And his contributions to humanity was immense. Such great personalities are not recognized by tall talk, but by their actions. And like I said, by their contributions to every important aspect of existence. And not just by giving a few lectures on yoga and building a few ashrams. And this is very important to understand. Anandamurti was a fascinating guru. He introduced a number of new yoga practices and meditation techniques and brought yoga philosophy to another level. He initiated social service projects and schools in basically every corner of the world. He introduced highly practical and I would say revolutionary ideas to every important aspect of the society and field of science too, like to physics, to biology, to chemistry, medical science, psychology, education, economy, art and literature, for the environment, for welfare of animals and plants, well, for every aspect of the whole planet. Anandamurti wrote numerous books about yoga and spirituality. And here he specifically highlighted Shiva's and Krishna's contributions to this ancient science. And from these books, we get really deep knowledge about these two personalities, about Shiva and Krishna. Well, about many other great yogis too. And by seeing Anandamurti's level of intuition and enlightenment, we can understand that he is a reliable source, that his informations about yoga history can be trusted. Most yogic scriptures hail Shiva as the father of yoga. And according to Anandamurti, Shiva was walking on this planet about 7,000 years ago. Because Shiva's mind were constantly absorbed into that infinite cosmic consciousness, he had perfect intuition. And that gave him insight into the direction and even into the future of humanity. And he knew that the dharma, or we can say the path of humans, was to evolve towards divinity. And for that he introduced some practical systems and various yogic and tantric practices to guide humanity in that direction. And this included meditation, yoga postures, breathing exercises, proper diet and lifestyle, etc. But also systems for how to develop the society in general. After Shiva had left this planet and time passed on, Shiva's teachings gradually got diluted and distorted. And then it was time for another great guru to take birth and bring Shiva's legacy to another level. And that's when Krishna was born about 3,500 years ago. At that time, the human body and mind had evolved a lot since Shiva was around. And as our body and mind evolves, the system of yoga needs to evolve too. Human life involves physical, mental and spiritual aspects. And to develop them all, Krishna introduced 3 new forms of yoga, namely Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga and Bhakti Yoga. The first one is Karma Yoga. And the Sanskrit word karma means action. And yoga means unification with that cosmic divine entity. Every day we do so many actions and activities. And karma yoga is where one tries to utilize all these actions to move closer to that divine. The next is jnana yoga, and jnana means knowledge. And in jnana yoga one gathers intellectual understanding of that divine and then use that understanding to move closer to it. And the last style of yoga that Krishna introduced is bhakti yoga, the yoga of love. And this is arguably the most powerful style of yoga. Here one tries to cultivate love and devotion for that divine. You know, when we are in love with someone, we constantly think about that person. In yoga science, deep thinking is known as meditation. And when such deep thinking and contemplation on that divine is combined with love for it, it brings us to a very sweet and blissful state of existence. And then we experience that union, or we can say that oneness with that divine. And that experience of oneness is in yoga science known as samadhi. One may say that samadhi is a state of mind, but it's maybe more precise to call it a state beyond the mind. Samadhi is a well-known term that appears in the famous path of yoga known as Raja Yoga. And Raja Yoga was introduced by the great yogi Patanjali about 2,300 years ago. But long before that, Shiva and Krishna had already invented the essential elements that appear in Raja Yoga. So what Patanjali did was to include these essential elements into the new system that he called Raja Yoga. Raja means king, and that indicates that it's a very advanced form of yoga. Raja Yoga has 8 different limbs, and in Sanskrit 8 is known as Ashta, and therefore Raja Yoga is often known as Ashtanga Yoga. And these 8 limbs is Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana and Samadhi. And Raja Yoga is without doubt among the most powerful and systematic styles of yoga there is. And this I will cover more in depth in another video. Patanjali wrote about these 8 limbs in his famous scripture known as the Yoga Sutras, and these are considered among the most important yogic scriptures of all times. Here it is important to note that the Ashtanga Yoga that in the past few decades has become very popular in yoga studios worldwide is not the same as Patanjali's Ashtanga Yoga that I'm talking about today. The Ashtanga Yoga practiced in most studios is mainly a physical style of yoga and do not include all the 8 limbs. Another prominent yogic scripture that has marked yoga history is the scripture known as the Bhagavad Gita. And the Bhagavad Gita is a dialogue between Krishna and his cousin Arjuna. And this is full of yogic wisdom and deep philosophy. From these 2 scriptures, the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali and the Bhagavad Gita, we learn that yoga is not a physical exercise, but it's a spiritual path. And the various elements introduced in yoga is to support us in that path, in that journey deeper and deeper within, towards our supreme reality. That journey is our dharma, that is our purpose of life. And therefore, we should all learn a proper system of yoga and meditation and start that journey as soon as possible. So, to round this off, what important lessons do we learn from yoga history? Well, we learn many. And one is that human beings have a purpose on this planet. And it is not a coincidence that we are here. And that purpose is to evolve our mind towards higher states of existence, towards higher states of consciousness. And for that to happen, we need to nourish our physical, mental, and spiritual potentialities. We also learn that we need to respect all forms of life and become responsible citizens. In other words, from yoga history, we learn what it means to be human in the true sense. Thank you for listening. Namaskar.